Pandemonium reigns.
Pandemonium reigns. It's not only the name of the podcast, it is the theme of college football. It is exactly what happened on Saturday. My name is Dan. This is Pandemonium Reigns. And this show and its title has never felt more appropriate. Tennessee only played University of Texas, El Paso. But Tennessee won the day in the sport. Absolutely won the day in the sport. Nobody walked away in a better position than the University of Tennessee Volunteers. I want to talk through all that. And before I kind of get into this, just want you to know I'm really just kind of sharing the excitement of the information that you already know, and probably not going to be educating you on anything new unless you've been under a rock for the past, 24 hours, and you decided to make me your first listen. If that's you, God bless your soul. I love you, and I'm glad that you are here for it. The day starts out with Ohio State and Indiana. Tennessee needed really one of two things to happen yesterday. You could argue, a lot of this is subjective because it's a committee that's in control of this of this end times on the season, and who's to say in the end what they're going to do. But just the way everything unraveled, it's pretty dang clear on the hand that they are now dealt and what cards they're going to have to play as a committee. There's a few exceptions here, but what it comes down to, man, I'm already off track. What this comes down to is if Tennessee wins Saturday against Vanderbilt in Nashville, they're in. That's all you get. You went from being in control of your destiny, traveling to Georgia, losing that game, needing things to happen. Those things happened. Now you're back in control. Beat Vanderbilt, and you're in this thing. Beat Vanderbilt, and you're in it. 12 teams, you're in. You got a spot. And I'm going to come back later to why I think our position is better than even some other SEC teams ranked above us and going to be seated above us. So we needed Indiana to get beat soundly by Ohio State. And some are going to argue, well, if not for those two special teams play, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's unless the just committee is just going to start breaking down film, which that doesn't seem to be their past on how things unfolded. I mean, they are pretty subjective and unpredictable. Just ask Florida State. It's definitely not on what you've done. It's what we think you're going to be or who you're going to be or whatnot. But nonetheless, special teams is still a part of the game. Indiana loses that game soundly. And some are going to argue that Indiana finally got exposed. Indiana's not good. The Big Ten is a joke. I mean, I'm hearing this in my own little network here in Gainesville, Georgia. And my comment on Indiana is this. Just because you haven't played anybody doesn't mean you're not good. Indiana's not necessarily a team that I want to run into regarding the playoff. If we play in the first round, which we're going to at this rate, and the game's at home, Newland's going to be on fire. It doesn't matter. Indiana, though, that's not a team that I want to mess around with. I actually like the way we match up better against a Penn State than we do in Indiana. Not going to get into that, though. Indiana loses. And because of all the other chaos that took place on Saturday, Indiana's not totally out of it. So Indiana takes one right on the mouth to Ohio State, which is what we needed. We needed for them to be out of the conversation. And Ohio State does the Lord's work for us and puts Tennessee back into the conversation. And then Florida beats Ole Miss. Never in my life have I said those two words. Go Gators. But there I was. It was less about more of a Florida win and way more about an Ole Miss loss. An Ole Miss loss solidifies Tennessee back into the playoff conversation. Right back into it. Lane Kiffin, the man has a ceiling. If there was any kind of conversation about him being the next head coach in Gainesville Florida, that conversation's done. Especially since they're going to hang on to Billy Napier. But if Billy Napier was not being retained, Kiffin is just not in that conversation. He has a clear ceiling, and Jackson Dart did not help him. I mean, he just kept. He didn't want to win it. Just kept throwing picks. I mean, he threw terrible balls yesterday, and it cost him. And Lane Kiffin, I think their NIL spent $20 million on this roster, and that's what you got. That's the result that you got. There's a whole other conversation that I could go down on why you build your team through high school, Clemson, Dabo, and why you don't do it through the portal, Lane Kiffin, Mike Norvell. Not an argument that I want to traffic down into today. It's just funny because Lane Kiffin spent a lot of money and he got 9-3, with one of those losses being Florida and another one of those being Kentucky. Had you told me going into the year that Ole Miss is they're gonna have 3 losses and one's Kentucky and one's Florida, and you beat Georgia the same year, like, the sport's drunk. The sport is absolutely intoxicated and it needs to go home as fast as it possibly can. So we need that. And then just things kept happening. What in the world? Who was worse yesterday, Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe? Jalen Milroe was bad. He was so bad. And some are going to diminish our loss to Oklahoma because now Alabama has lost to them. But I think what you got Saturday night in Norman, Oklahoma was an Oklahoma team playing with its hair on fire, playing with pride. I think what you saw is the result of a great locker room and a culture that Brent Venables has established, and what a guy to play for. And a confident Jackson Arnold, probably because it's later in the year and there's more time, and sometimes just being benched just helps you out. And it was almost like it was too fast for Bama, which was just unreal. Oklahoma offense was marching up and down the field. I mean, beat Alabama like a drum. And now Alabama is out of this conversation. An in-conference foe who was ahead of us in this playoff conversation, out of the conversation, gone. And that ESPN analyst, Heather Dinnick or whatever her name, who still got them right in there. Like, you just can't freaking let go of Alabama. They got 3 losses, dude. They got 3. They're gone. At some point, sorry if I'm yelling, at some point, losses have to mean something. It has to be held against you. And you could say, well, why does that not apply to Tennessee? It does apply to Tennessee, but we're in the realm of other SEC teams that also have 2 losses. So, and we didn't get beat like a drum in our losses. We went to Arkansas and lost by 5. We went to Georgia, and I think the game was closer than what the score reflected, and it was still only 2 scores. Alabama got handled. We didn't get handled, all right? Whatever. Okay, moving on. So, and then you've got the Texas A&M Auburn situation, which who in their right mind saw that coming? And what's crazy about that one is I had turned this one on with time left in the Alabama-Oklahoma game, and just watching Auburn try to find ways to lose it. The false start after false start after false start was just aggravating. And, I'm not even an Auburn fan. I mean, I'm rooting for Auburn because, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they hate Georgia, and I hate Georgia, and they hate Bama, and I hate Bama, and it's just like, hey, man, let's hang out. Let's be buddies. So, and I just don't like A&M. A&M is just one of those schools, like, they could go away, like, never play anything ever again, and I really, really just wouldn't care. There's nothing about your school that I find appealing. Your traditions are weird. You're weird. Your cheerleaders look like milkmen. It's weird. It's really, really weird. But I guess that's what makes college football unique. But you go into Jordan Hare, where the voodoo is, where the magic is, and you catch a loss in overtime to a bad Auburn team. What, worst in the conference? Ranked worst in the conference? Standings were worst in the conference. And so what does that do? That affects the entire situation in Atlanta, which is just mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. All right, so let me talk to you guys real quick about why I think Saturday was so good for us and how I really do believe that we're in one of the best positions possible. Even better than let's say, Georgia. So Georgia's going to Atlanta, all right? Georgia is probably going to play Texas in Atlanta. So a rematch against Texas. And here's the scenario. You know what's really hard to do? One of the hardest things to do in sports. They say one of the hardest things to do in sports is hit the fastball in baseball. Never played the sport, but that strikes me as extremely difficult. What I do know is beating the same team twice in football in the same year. Incredibly hard. Georgia's going to be faced with that. Now, there's going to come a point in time. It's coming. I mean, it's coming. Where conference championship games are going to no longer exist. And year one of the expanded playoff are showing you why. Take Georgia. Put them in Atlanta against the monster of Texas. A lot of people are down on Texas, disrespecting Texas, saying they're overrated. They ain't played nobody, yada, yada, yada. If your team is not Texas, are you really telling me that you want to draw them? I'll let you sit on that for a minute. The roster's loaded. They've got talent everywhere. And again, just because you haven't played anybody doesn't mean you're not good. So I don't want to play them. I don't like the way that matches up. I don't like it at all. So you got two heavyweight fighters going to play in Atlanta. Would you rather do that? All right. Would you rather be Georgia going jab for jab, haymaker, haymaker with Texas? And if you win that game, you get a first round bye. Okay, good for you. If you lose that game, I don't think the committee is going to knock you out of the playoffs. So some of you might be saying, well, it's not a big deal because they're still in it anyway, even if they probably get blown out. I'm going to agree with you. I don't like it, but I'm going to agree with you. Would you rather do that with the risk of losing that game, playing the first round, getting all that, or being in our situation where there is a high chance to middle chance? I would say if I'm putting money down now, we're probably the away team in the first round. But there's still a chance, all right? Say more dominoes fall our way come next week. Would you rather play your first round game at home in your own stadium against an Indiana, against a Penn State, maybe even an SMU, possibly an Arizona State? Think about it. Think about it for a minute. Think about it because there's a game that's going to be played in that window before the quarterfinals, no matter what. You're either sitting at home while two are duking it out in Atlanta, or you're sitting in at home while one of your conference foes is playing a lesser at their home stadium. It's a real possibility. It's a real possibility. I still think we're going to be an away team in the first round. However, I would rather play a Penn State on the road, as difficult as that would be, than Texas and Atlanta. Call me crazy. I don't think that Penn State can throw the punches that a Texas can. I just don't think that can happen. You got several brackets out, projected brackets on, what is going to be the final outcome after rivalry week, after week 14. And this playoff thing is so stupid. It's so stupid. Just want to talk about that. If you're watching on YouTube, high chance that I'll put this screenshot up for you so you can see it. But, I mean, if you're Ohio State or Arizona State or even SMU Notre Dame is probably a good situation too. Arizona State projected to play Ohio State first round, in the first round, and then the winner of that game would play Boise in the quarterfinals. Man, can you just imagine the way that's going to unfold if it's Boise and Ohio State? Just imagine. And then the winner of Tennessee, Georgia plays Oregon. This is the best scenario right here, I think. SMU and Notre Dame playing Miami, or the winner of that one playing Miami. This whole thing is just dumb. It's just so dumb. Then you're thinking, Dan, okay, what's your solution? Go back to 4 and have your BCS calculate your top 4. Your champion's in your top 4. Your national champion is in your top 4. And if it's not in your top 4, then what are we doing here? Hey, I just wanted to come on here and rant. I wanted to say thank you for guys for tuning in and hanging out with me. This thing is just wild. This is just absolutely wild what has taken place. And and again, Tennessee has won the day. What a day to be a Tennessee Volunteer and a fan. I mean, we're in a great spot. And I'm going to stick to my guns, man. I especially if we get a home game in the first round. That is a better situation than playing in Atlanta. It's a better situation. We might not be able to walk away with the opportunity to be conference champions, but you know, as a player, I would want that. I wouldn't want to be the conference champion. But in these times, in these days, nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. It doesn't mean anything. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything. And here's why it doesn't mean anything. Because if you lose that game, especially if you're Georgia, you're still in it. Still in it. They're not gonna knock Georgia out when Georgia has already beaten them in Austin. They're not gonna do it. It's not going to happen. Georgia's still in this thing, and they could go wet the bed in Atlanta. They might as well just forfeit, like bump that, right? Whatever. So, I really like where we're sitting. You got to go in again. You got to go in and beat Vanderbilt. None of this matters if you don't handle business next Saturday. Things are back in your control. It's back in your hands. Don't let this go. Did anybody hear how sad and depressed Lane Kiffin was in his post-game conference? I have never seen that man speak that lowly. He was just, yeah, we let this one get away from us. I mean, woe is me type volume and language and body posture. I mean, he has to be embarrassed. I'm off that point now, but he's got to be embarrassed. $20 million for that. That's what you got. That's what you got. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I have no idea what kind of episodes are going to be coming out this week because it's Thanksgiving week, and we are going to hang out with our families. So that's why I'm getting this one recorded, and I just couldn't wait to talk about it. I've never recorded on a Sunday. Matter of fact, you have to go back to our first year. I say never. You have to go back to our first year of the podcast when we were recording on Sunday nights. But, man, this is just too exciting. Let's talk about it. We're back in this thing. Hey, I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on this. Love you guys. God bless. Go Vols.
Pandemonium reigns.